Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan Elro.
And I'm Rebecca Rand.
In our top story, the Jewish state has sent an advanced reconnaissance satellite into space. Officials hail the successful launch of the Ophik-16 spy satellite into orbit from a base in central Israel, saying it is a mighty achievement. Shlomi Sudari, the head of the space program at Israel Aerospace Industries, explained that Ophik-16 is state-of-the-art and equipped with breakthrough Israeli technology. Israel's Defense Minister Benny Gantz praised the endeavor, saying Israel's technological and intelligence superiority is the cornerstone of its security. He added that we will continue to fortify Israel's strength on every front.
A massive fire at Iran's Nance nuclear facility has likely set the rogue state's atomic program back by at least a year. Satellite imagery shows massive damage at the site. Israeli media sources have reported that the fire completely destroyed a laboratory where Tehran was developing advanced centrifuges. These superior cylinders were meant to replace older centrifuges at the fortified nuclear facility, increasing Tehran's ability to enrich larger amounts of uranium in a much shorter time. A Middle East intelligence official told the New York Times that the fire was caused by a powerful bomb and that Israel was likely behind the sabotage of the nuclear plant. Experts believe the damage from the explosion and subsequent fire have dealt a devastating blow to Iran's nuclear ambitions.
The Knesset Christian Allies Caucus celebrated its relaunch last week under the leadership of Deputy Speaker and member of Knesset Sharon Haskell. The caucus is made up of members from 7 different parties from across the political spectrum. It works to forge direct lines of communication and cooperation between Knesset members, Christian leaders, and political representatives around the globe. The Knesset Christian Allies Caucus is one of 42 Israel Allies caucuses with over 1,000 parliamentarians, coordinated by the Israel Allies Foundation. Josh Reinstein, the director of the Christian Allies Caucus, said, "We are confident that under Sharon Haskell's skilled leadership, our network of Christian leaders and parliamentarians will continue to grow and flourish." Reinstein stressed that we are especially excited about the prominent and talented group of MKs in our newly launched caucus, which continues to be the largest and most influential in the Knesset.
Several Arab banks with branches in Judea and Samaria are refusing to pay stipends to the families of Palestinian terrorists over fear of facing Israeli sanctions. The Palestinian Authority shells out tens of millions of dollars each year in salaries to the families of terrorists. These pay-to-slay stipends have cost the corrupt Palestinian government millions in lost U.S. aid for inciting and funding terror. Jerusalem has announced that it will begin sanctioning private banks that participate in the terror transactions. 4 Arab banks reportedly refused to transfer terror payments this month in response to the impending sanctions.
The Israeli Knesset has approved the appointment of Gilad Erdan as the ambassador to the United States and to the United Nations. Erdan has served the Jewish state as a member of Knesset for 17 years. He most recently held the office of Public Security Minister and Minister of Strategic Affairs. He was one of the founding members of the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus. Erdan pledged to represent Israel with great pride and said that preventing Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons and defending Israel's right to apply sovereignty in the homeland of our fathers will be major priorities in his new position.
Jews and Arabs mourn the death of Michael Ben Zikri, who drowned after saving a Bedouin family. The village of Hura paid tribute to the heroic Israeli who saved an Arab mother and her 3 children from drowning in a lake in southern Israel. 45-year-old Ben Zikri saw the family struggling in the water and rushed to save them. He was able to get all 4 of them to safety before he drowned. Ben Zikri was praised for his selflessness and for making the ultimate sacrifice to save the family. Many of the residents of the Hura Bedouin village traveled to Ashkelon to pay their respects to the Israeli hero as he was laid to rest.
Pro-Palestinian activists held Day of Rage protest in major American cities. The residents of Brooklyn, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Miami were witness to the shocking rallies in which U.S. citizens call for the death of the United States and of Israel. Roz Rothstein, the CEO of Stand With Us, a pro-Israel organization, said hate groups that organize these rallies are dedicated to ending Israel's existence and promoting anti-Semitic propaganda.
The families of victims of terror attacks in Israel are taking legal action against Qatar for funding terror. The lawsuit filed in New York City alleges that the Arab Gulf state secretly provided millions of dollars to Hamas and Islamic Jihad to perpetrate attacks in Israel, which killed Americans and Israelis alike. Qatar reportedly skirted U.S. sanctions by funneling millions of dollars to terror groups through charitable organizations and financial institutions largely controlled by the monarch. The lawsuit states that money provided by Qatar directly funded 6 terror attacks in Israel between 2014 to 2016. The plaintiffs are hoping that the trial will fuel ongoing congressional investigations into Qatar's support of terror organizations and anti-U.S. militia groups.
The Tomb of the Patriarchs, located in the city of Hebron, was an important Jewish pilgrimage site during the First Temple period. According to the Bible, Abraham purchased the cave of Machpelah as a family tomb where he and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah are all buried. The cave of Machpelah is the second holiest site in Judaism after the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. There has never been an organized archaeological excavation at the holy site, because when the Islamic religious authorities took control, they sealed the burial cave and refused to allow Jews to enter. In 1981, a small group of Jews made a daring mission into the cave and brought out vessels from the burial tomb for research and to determine the date of the antiquities. A recent study of the items proves that Hebron was an important Jewish pilgrimage site in ancient Israel. The pottery dates back to the First Temple period, about 2,500 years ago.
Hundreds of government leaders from 20 countries around the world have signed a statement asserting their full support for Israel to proclaim its sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. The parliamentarians signed a letter stating, "We affirm that the Jewish communities of Judea and Samaria have been a key part of the biblical and ancestral homeland of the Jewish nation for centuries." The letter was organized by members of the Israel Allies Foundation, who garnered support for Israeli sovereignty from hundreds of parliamentarians in governments around the world.
We are living in mysterious yet miraculous times. We've witnessed the most remarkable fulfillment of biblical prophecy, the Jewish people's return to Israel, and the prosperity and contributions of this tiny country in such a short time. Yet we've also seen an unexpected rise in anti-Semitism, which takes the form of anti-Zionism and alliances between groups that are fighting against the most fundamental biblical values. In the book Titus, Trump, and the Triumph of Israel, Josh Reinstein answers important questions to clarify what has driven political action from the time that the Roman Emperor Titus destroyed Jerusalem until today, when President Trump recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Get your copy today and learn how faith-based diplomacy has changed the world. To order your advance copy, go to triumphofisrael.com.
That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host Josh Reinstein, and we're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Sheikh Abu Khalil Tamimi. He is the chairman of the International Movement for Peace and Coexistence. Sheikh Tamimi, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about what is the International Movement for Peace and Coexistence.
Yeah, the co-founders of this movement are from the 3 Abrahamic faiths, a Jewish lady and an evangelical pastor and a Muslim sheikh. It's really needed in this time to have a dialogue, much more dialogue and understanding between the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And so they established this movement to fill the gap between the religions and also to confront the extremism in the Islamic world. These people, political Islam, political violence Islam, wants to hijack Islam and to use some Muslims, because you know the Islamic nation is a big nation and huge numbers. So they can use some people through some interpretations to the Quran and the Hadith. Of course, it's a wrong interpretations, just to bargain power and money.
Well, you know, you've been an outspoken proponent, someone who supports the state of Israel, and you're a Muslim Sheikh, and you've gone around the world and you said, look, there's freedom in Israel, there's democracy. Why is it important for you to stand up and speak out on behalf of Israel?
Really, we seek to all the time to achieve more understandings with Israel, more peaceful coexistence with Israel. I think we need a lot of understanding, mutual understanding, and it's better for both sides than confrontation and impact. It is written in Quran. It's very clear in Surah Al-Isra. It's Surah number 17, verse number 104. That Bani Israel, the Jewish nation, will return back to the Holy Land in the final days, in these days.
So, you know, you've been very outspoken against the BDS movement. You've called it the new anti-Semitism. Why is it important for Arab workers, Jewish workers to work together in the heartland of Israel?
In my ideology, in my belief, and hundreds of millions of Muslims around the world with me in this ideology, that the Jewish people will return to the Holy Land. You know, we live together as Muslims, Christians, and Jewish and Jews, but in these days, it's written in Quran that they will come back again to the Holy Land, and we have to know how we can deal with them, how we can make an coexistence with them, not to fight them, because fighting them is against the Quran. Some political Islamic movement denying this issue, and they said that it's an occupation and we have to fight it. But they are against the Quran, really, because they are looking for their wealth and bargaining authority and power.
Well, another aspect is the BDS movement is that it targets actually Muslim Arab workers. People who are caught in the crossfire of BDS lose their jobs. There's boycotts of companies that are employing Arab workers and people who their livelihood depends on working in Israel. So why is it important to stand up for those people as well?
Yeah, we realized that the BDS wants to use the Palestinians. It's a kind of, or a branch of the communism. It's like a branch of the Soviet Union. They want to fight Israel, and they want to fight the United States of America and its allies, and they use the Palestinians as a tool to fight Israel and fight the United States of America and its allies. We realized this fact, and they are not helping or doing something help the Palestinian or the Arab or Muslim agendas. They have their own agendas against the United States and Israel. In our belief, in our ideology, we have to cooperate and make an alliance with the people of the book, which are Jews and Christians, against the communists, against the atheists, against the non-believers and all over the world. Of course, we want to educate them. We want to bring them to faith, to be believers. But in any case, in any time, we must not go and fight the United States of America and fight Israel, and then we will be an easy victim to the Soviet Union, to the Russians, to the Chinese in this time.
You work with a lot of evangelical Christian leaders, Bible-believing Christians all over the world. What is their reaction to your message?
Yeah, I was born, you know, in the struggle. I was born in a tragedy life, in a drama, you know. The first Intifada came in when I was a teenager. So it was a question in my mind always, what the Americans want and what the Israeli wants. Maybe what Israeli wants, what the Jews want, it's an easy question. They want to have an independent state. But what the American wants, it was really an important question in my mind. And it was not easy to find an answer. Unless I found an Egyptian doctor lives in Connecticut near New York. He works in Yale University, and he knows exactly what the evangelicals wants. Because the question what American wants means what evangelical wants. I think the cooperation, the real cooperation, began in 2009. I was working and supporting a tribe leader, a Palestinian tribe leader. And he had like an understandings with a powerful rabbi from New York, is Rabbi Shlomo Riskin. And then after these immediate understandings, pastor, the big and most powerful pastor in the United States, John Hagee, came and enjoyed. So it was really a wonderful, a fabulous angel, a Muslim tribe leader with a powerful rabbi and a powerful evangelical pastor. So I began from that point. I realized that we can now have the answer of this question and to have a big deal in the Holy Land, in Jerusalem, and and everywhere. So that was a good cooperation. That was an excellent cooperation.
So, Sheikh, you're a very prominent member of your clan, of the village. You're a prominent Sheikh in the Palestinian community. You live in Ramallah. What has been the reaction of the Palestinian Authority to your message? Because, as they incite against Israel, you're trying to bring people closer to Israel. So what has been their reaction?
Yeah, I faced a lot of troubles and a lot of pressure in the beginning. But after I had of attention, of American attention, and European attention from the friends, and also Israeli attention, something began to change. And also when the Trump administration came to the White House, something changed. I have a lot of supporters. 90% of the people are with me and are behind me, and they look forward to have a much more recognition from the American government and the Israeli government also. But also some extremism, as I told you, who wants to bargain authority, power and money. They are against me, and they try to make a pressure upon me always.
Well, it's a perspective that we don't get to hear much here in Israel, and I appreciate it. Sheikh, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
It's the time to cooperation, and my evangelical friends should know that some extremism wanted to hijack Islam. Islam as a religion came to cooperate with Christians and Jews, not confront them.
Thank you, Sheikh Tamimi, for being on the show, and thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, the return to Zion with Karen Hayesod.
Shalom, and welcome to the Return to Zion with Karen Hayesod. I'm Sam Grunberg, World Chairman of Keren HaYesod United Israel Appeal, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. Today, you will witness the fulfillment of biblical prophecy through the gathering of the exiles. God bless you from Jerusalem.
אני כל כך קשורה לישראל, שלא משנה איזה תחרות אני נוסעת קטנה, גדולה, כל פעם שאני רואה דגל ישראל זה עושה לי צמרמורת בגוף. אולימפיאדה זה חלום של כל ספורטאי, אני חושבת. איך שנכנסנו לאולימפיאדה, לכפר האולימפי, ראינו הספורטאים הכי טובים שיש, באמת, כאילו, מכל העולם, וואו, גם אנחנו ביניהם. אין לי מדינה אחרת. זה הבית שלי.
העלייה לישראל היא עוזרת להגשים לי את החלומות שלי, היא עוזרת לממש את השאיפות שלי ואת הפוטנציאל שלי כאומן. למרות שהמשפחה שלי היא משפחה יהודית, עד גיל 14 בערך לא היה לי שמץ של מושג מה זה להיות יהודי, חוץ מזה שזה לא הנושא שכדאי לדבר עליו בקרב החברים ובבית ספר ובמקומות ציבוריים בכלל. לא פחדתי לעלות. לא פחדתי לעלות כי ידעתי שאני לא אהיה לבד. לא פחדתי לעלות כי ידעתי שלמרות שאני עוזב את הבית והמשפחה שלי לא תהיה איתי, אבל יהיה מאחוריי גב.
If you've taken all the messages and all the education that we received, which come as no surprise of my desire to establish and live a life in Israel, I still see myself as an Oleh Hadash or new immigrant. My current role at Bank Leumi, which allows me to act as an ambassador both for the bank and for the State of Israel, makes me feel like I've come full circle. We have a people who, for the past 60 years, despite challenges, despite hardships, despite a war every decade, continue to succeed on an international scale. This is a land of modern-day heroes.
הגעתי מטרנסילבניה, ברומניה, הייתי בן 14. כאן ראיתי פעם ראשונה חיבור בראייתי מדהים בין השורשים שלנו, תורת ישראל, עם ישראל וארץ ישראל. כל אחד מכם כאן יכול להגיע, כי נותנים לו את ההזדמנות, הרבה בזכות קרן היסוד והתרומות שאנשים טובים נותנים, להתחנך, לגדול ולהיות יום אחד מן הימים רופא, פרופסור באוניברסיטה, רב, מדען או אלוף בצה"ל. בלעדיכם התורמים היה קשה למדינת ישראל להתמודד עם האתגר הזה ולהבטיח שאנחנו לאורך זמן נממש את החלום שלנו להקים מדינה בטוחה ובית לעם היהודי.
The Aliyah is the new blood that have to be constantly injected to make us better people. And in order to make us better people, we need Aliyah.
The majority of Israelis, in one way or the other, are either Olim themselves or descendants of Olim. And this is the power of the state. It's a major force.
Due to the coronavirus pandemic, we're expecting a massive wave of Aliyah from Jewish communities all around the world. Help us bring them home, and let's bless Israel together.
To donate and get information, visit khisrael.org.
Christians have achieved incredible heights in Israel. We have an Arab Christian who served on our Supreme Court for 15 years. We have others, diplomats, business people, university professors, doctors, everything. They're in every field. Many, many examples of Christians who contribute greatly to Israeli society and share in the great miracle of Israel's success. Sadly, some countries don't respect Christians. In Iran, Christians are brutally persecuted. Christian pastors have spent years in prison there. Now, this is an issue which I believe should concern everyone. And let me say clearly, Israel stands in complete solidarity with persecuted Christians in Iran. And I ask, why are so many people silent as Christians are jailed and tortured in Iran? Well, I can say this, we in Israel will not be silent. And I will continue to raise the plight of the long-suffering Iranian people, Christians, Baha'is, students, journalists. Iran's regime is a point of darkness in the Middle East. Israel is a point of light. The great news is that Israel has never been stronger. Nations from around the world are flocking to Israel. They seek our ingenuity. They seek our technology. They seek our intelligence in both senses of the word. Israel still faces many threats. On our southern border, the fanatic terrorist group Hamas calls for genocide of Jews. In the north, Hezbollah has stockpiled massive numbers of missiles aimed at Israel. And Iran, well, Iran openly calls for Israel's annihilation. But Israel is strong. We will not let thugs and tyrants bully us. We will always defend ourselves. We will prosper. We will thrive. And Israel's strength is not merely because of our army, it's because of our spirit. And it's because of the spirit of friends like you around the world. Thank you for always standing with Israel. You're truly among our greatest friends in the world. I cherish that friendship, and I cherish your solidarity. Thank you for standing with Israel. Thank you for standing with the truth. Thank you all.
The biblical prophecy is unfolding right before our very eyes. The people of Israel are returning to the Promised Land after 2,000 years of exile. But millions of Jews are still longing to come home. Bless Israel by supporting Keren HaYesod United Israel Appeal, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. Together, we can fulfill the prophecy of the Bible.
Let's bless Israel together.
To donate and get information, visit khisrael.org.
And that's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Ron.
And I'm Rebecca Rand, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us next week for all of your Israel updates.